All right, so we have just finished the three major tenets of Romanticism. If you cover Romanticism in artistic class or English, there is so much more to it. But I just wanted to give you the ideas as kind of frame it within the confines of how we're looking at it. What we're going to see now is we're going to look at English Romanticism. We're going to look at the literature and art. Here's a John Constable piece. Really, I think this is a pretty telling sign. It's a landscape. You see the old. You see an oncoming storm, possibly. Just a beautiful piece, and that really kind of encapsulates what I think of English Romanticism. So let's go and jump in. When I think of English Romanticism, the first thing that comes to me is Wordsworth and Coleridge's lyrical ballads, published in the 1780s, 90s, 1790, excuse me, that really ushered in the Romantic Age. It introduced England to accessible poetry. It was no longer the kind of poetry of Petrarch or that took an intellectual degree to kind of figure things out. This poetry is for the masses, if you will, and it reflected the inner self and criticisms of industrialization. Here we see a great illustration of that. To every natural form, rock, fruit, or flower, even the loose stones that cover the highway, I gave a moral life. I saw them fill or link them to some feeling. The great mass lay behind, bedded in quickening soul, and all that I beheld respired with inward meaning. That sense of inwardness, and this is from the lyrical ballads. You see that it's directly from your textbook. Just ponder those kind of elements when you think about this. Additionally, it was the bizarre Gothic literature. Bizarre is one of the other tenets we didn't really go over. But Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, such a great example of bizarre literature. Most likely was inspired out of an opium-induced conversation with Lord Byron, another famous poet, and her husband Percy Shelley. And it really is about the struggles with quote unquote progress, the criticisms of attempting to dominate. And we see the idea in which Dr. Frankenstein created a monster to be perfect, and yet that in the end, that monster dominated his life, as nature will dominate us. Before I move off this slide, I do want to give you a nice little story about Mary Shelley. Mary Shelley, she's again, her mom is Wollstonecraft, died during her childbirth. And what we see with this Frankenstein, or with Mary Shelley, is when her husband drowned, Percy Shelley drowned, she pickled his heart and put it in her pickled his heart and put it in her desk, and so that his heart was always near her. A little bit bizarre. So again, those are for you to kind of ponder through. J.M.W. Turner's Snowstorm, Steamboat off of Harbor's Mouth, another great piece here. This is similar. When I think of his ideas here, this is like the Great Western Railway that we saw earlier. This composition illustrates the struggle of a steamboat against the vortex. A depiction of peril. I do think when you see, we have a sense of chaos, and these ideas are taken from Alice Hartworth, and there's your GQ magazine that you can go to if you wanted to read the article. But in this sense, I just want to point out, it's just really, there's chaos, there's this idea, and I do think J.M.W. Turner, though he is not anti-industrial progress, he is critical in the sense that he wants to know, what is this future? And I think his piece really shows that. Here's John Constable's a similar piece that I showed you earlier, Cathedral from the Meadows, 1831. Again, this is a piece that brings us in the heart of nature, something that the pantheists of the Romanticism really got into. We see a Gothic church here. In the background, we see a rainbow of hope, but behind that rainbow, we see a storm. And John Constable is here utilizing this concept in which what is happening in the future here. And there's a yearning of both nature and the past. The storm and the rainbow created conflict between hope and despair. I just think that this is a wonderful piece to, if you were to see this, you would stop and ponder. And again, this comes from a art historian Anne Lyles. You see the link there if you wanted to know more about that. But again, some wonderful things there. And that's where I'm going to pause right now. So as we're looking at this, we're looking at English Romanticism. English Romanticism takes the three tenets of Romanticism and makes it English. We see it through the poetry of Coleridge and Wordsworth. We see it through the bizarre literature of Mary Shelley, and we see it in the artistic expressions of J.M.W. Turner and John Constable. I hope that makes sense to you guys. If you guys have questions, of course, make sure you write them down and ask.